There is a new brand in town and their name is Chokehold Cosmetics, and that name stirred already a lot of drama. Let's look at them. So I am in the very lucky position that Chokehold Cosmetics actually sent over their whole first collection that contains, aside from the eyeshadow palette that I held up already, a brush set that is made out of, that contains, but I already said contains, a 5-piece brush set is in that collection, where you have 3 eye brushes and 2 face brushes, then 1 reddish brick looking gloss, and then of course the eyeshadow palette. The brush set, as said, 2 face brushes, 2 eye brushes. I used them throughout the video. I used them before the review, so my final thoughts will be, of course, at the end. The gloss is very interesting. First of all, it smells sweet. If you know me, you know I love sweet, smelly lip products. You either put the sweet smell on it or don't put any smell in it, because I don't like florals or whatnot. So let's give it a quick swatch here. And if you expected a dark brick color, you already saw it on my lips. It is not. It is surprisingly a very bright red. Personally, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of red lips and red lip glosses, but lately I have been trying a little bit. I even got the new Fenty Beauty Cherry gloss set, where that what's that shade? This one here is called Cherry Amour, but I haven't tried it yet. But I'm dipping my toe into the red lip water, sea, ocean. But yeah, the gloss I have on my lips, I will wear it for both looks, and that being said, I will create both looks with the eyeshadow palette. The eyeshadow palette has a bit of a different concept, because you have 7 eyeshadows and then 2 face products. Spoiler alert, I will use that highlighter also as face highlight, but that one here, Bite Mark, no way that I will be using this as a blush. The color is just so not for me for blush, and you know that I just do not like palettes that have eyeshadow and face products in them, but I will use all of the shades in here for eyeshadow. So these are not wasted, I incorporate them for me as an eyeshadow. Let's take a look here at the swatches, and I was a bit surprised on how good they swatch, because my experience is that a lot of the times when a palette looks that intense like this, that the swatches might be a little bit tricky. The only shade where I had some trouble swatching it was actually the center shade Toxic Bond. You will also see in the application when I do the look, where this is all over my lid, that I also struggle a little bit with application on the lid, because this has a sheerness to it that I A, didn't expect, and B, don't want in a shade like this, but that's for the end of the video when I tell you my review. And before we head into the review and the looks itself, let's talk about the brand name. I have seen the discussions on Reddit, on Instagram, blah blah, how people are just connecting the word chokehold with that violent behavior, with that that motion of someone physically attacking a person by putting their hand on their neck. Let me tell you, chokehold, if you didn't know, is also a slang word. Urban Dictionary even defines that to be very much into something, to be in the grip of something. For example, Squid Game had me in a chokehold when we were talking about the Netflix show, or that man had me in the chokehold when you are really into them, or the brand had me in the chokehold. This eyeshadow palette had me in the chokehold. Just what I'm asking for is, can we please stop over analyzing words and putting just putting meanings into it that clearly is not connected to that? Thank you a lot. So now let's head into the 2 looks and then my final thoughts. Starting the first look, very classic, with the shade Undressed, the lightest blending shade that I have here, and I apply this slightly above the crease as my transition color. I now tap into Bite Mark, which technically is a blush. And I use the brush number 3 from the Chokehold set, and I run this through the crease. I now go into Blot Off, hope I said that right, with the brush number 2. And I apply this on the outer V and outer crease. And whatever is left, I also run a bit through the crease, but not all the way through. I now go into Blindfold with a flat brush like that. And I press it here into my upper lash line. I now go into Toxic Bond and I apply this all over my lid. That shimmer here, Toxic Bond, is very, very hard pressed into the pan. So I had to apply a lot of pressure and actually a little bit of scraping to get enough pigment loosened so that I have something here on the brush to apply. For liner, I will be using the ColourPop Joyride one. I think that matches with the dark reddish theme. And I apply this on the lower waterline. And then I at first take the flat brush with the shade Blindfold, the black. And I very, very gently apply this along the whole lower lash line. And I go into Blood Oath. What is the correct pronunciation? Let me Google that. Oath. Blood Oath. I think that sounds a little bit weird. I don't know if it's my mouth and because I'm just not used to say a word like that, but it feels wrong. But okay. But I take that shade and I smudge it on the lower lash line. And for the inner corner highlight, I take Sweet Lies, apply it on the inner corner. And just for the sake of using it, I take the brush number 4 now and wipe through the Sweet Lies highlighter here and apply this as highlight. I mean, it is a beautiful highlight, but you know, I just don't like mixed palettes with face and eye products. So for me, that shade will forever be a beautiful inner corner highlight. But for the sake of the review, here you also have it applied as classic highlight. And as last step, I will also show you for the first look the application of the gloss that comes into this collection. For the next looks, I will just apply it. I also will not apply any lip liner. I just want to see the pure gloss. Okay. That is a very interesting formula because it goes on like a gloss, but I have a feeling that it sets on the lips. So could that be maybe a tint? I don't know. It says just lip gloss, but I like the way this looks. I actually even like the shade itself. You know, I'm not a red lip wearer at all, but I have been putting my feet into the red lip product water lately, so I do like it. So here you have now the first finished look, and now let's move on to look number 2. Okay, for look number 2, I go directly into Blindfold today. And I start to press this into the lash line. I then go into the shade Trapped and start to directly blend this into the crease and completely throughout it and slightly blend it up. So this will be transition shade and crease shade all in one. I now tap into Blindfold with a blending brush. This is the Chokehold number 1. And I use this to extend that black that I did, blend it kind of like a blended cat liner shape, and then I also bring it into the outer crease. I applied my glitter glue and now I go into No Safe Word. That shade looks so good, and when I swatched it, I was very, very excited. So let's now apply this and I pack it basically all over the lid. This has a little bit of a different texture to the shade that I used in the previous look, the Toxic Bond one. This is not as hard pressed, but this is also not a duo/multi-chrome. This is just a regular silver granite metallic looking shade. Tapped slightly back into the black and Blindfold. And now I'm just first of all bringing back some of the major darkness on the outside And then I take the rest and now throughout the complete crease to diffuse the shimmer and add just a little bit of that black. Since this turns out into a quite grungy look and quite smoky look, I will be using a black liner. This is the Pat McGrath Extreme Black Permagel liner, but you can use, of course, any liner you like. And I do the typical emo way, so I just pinch. So I just poke the liner between the upper and lower waterline, close the eye, and then I just wiggle. If you grew up in the early 2000s, you definitely know this technique. I then take the flat brush from the beginning and tap back into blindfold, and I apply this on the lower lash line, smudging it out. Now tapped into trap again and use this slightly lower than the black to smooth and smoke. For the inner corner highlight, I will use the only shade that I didn't use yet, and that is the shade Shackle. And now I tab it on. And here we have now the second and the final look of that video. I'm honest with you, I like this look so much more than the first one. And I think if I would have used that blood off, I already forgot how to pronounce that reddish shade too, maybe in the inner crease or just on the lower lash line, that, although this look is already a 10 out of 10, would have made this look maybe even a 12 out of 10. I really like it. It is simple, but it's effective. You don't need to have super complicated looks to have the wow effect. Oh, and on the lips, I am of course wearing the gloss again. So let's talk about the brushes first. The 3 eye brushes are absolutely fine. I had no trouble with them blending any of the shades. Before I even started filming the review of the palette, already used the eye brushes in other looks that I did, and I liked it. The only thing that I wish was that instead of having 3 blending brushes, I would have loved to have something like that, you know, like a flat brush that you can pack the shimmers on. You could use the brush number 2 because it's a little bit more paddle shaped, but I personally, that's just a personal thing, I prefer the like real flat packing brushes. Now let's talk about the 2 face brushes. The brush number 5 I actually use for pressed under eye powders. I either use it on the under eye if I'm not using a loose powder where I then take a puff, but I use pressed under eye powders to set down my eye primer and the concealer that I use on that day underneath my foundation. I like it a lot. It picks up powders very, very well. And the brush number 4 is this one here. That I actually use for highlight. Usually I am more drawn to smaller brushes for highlighter, like the Real Technique setting brush or the Refer Alexandra Anneal brush, that one. But this, since it is a little bit bigger, first of all, yes, you have a bigger application area of the highlighter, but I feel like because of that specific shape here, the highlighter goes on a bit more diffused. For the gloss, I do like the formula. I do like the way this sits on the lips. I do like the way this smells. The thing that I have to criticize is just a personal preference thing, and that is the color. This type of red, while I do like it, and I think if I add a darker lip liner, a dark cool tone brown lip liner, or even a black lip liner underneath, I can definitely manipulate the color a lot. But purely applied like this is not going to be a color that I will wear a lot. But again, that is just a color criticism here. This has nothing to do with the formula. So honestly, I wish that they would come out in this formula actually with other glosses, like a very, very cool toned nudie color, maybe something in that direction of, where is it, my latest obsession? No, not this one. Let me grab it. I have it somewhere here in my lip gloss holder. This one here. This is the shade Rose Amber from the new Fenty lip oils. This shade, this taupey, rosy, cool toned brown lip color, that in this formula, I would probably wear 6 out of 7 times in a week. And of course, the star of that very first collection is the eyeshadow palette. I said it already in the intro, I am just personally not the biggest fan of mixed eyeshadow palettes. I want to have just eyeshadow or just face products, but I know that a lot of people like this concept, so I'm not mad about this. I do like the quality overall. Is this a quality that stands now out against others? No. Will it stand out against my C Beauties like Narimi? No, it won't. But is that a real surprise? No, it isn't. This is a formulation that, in my opinion, is not disappointing, and it will not disappoint you when you use it. The expectation that I have towards any eyeshadow palette is it has to perform and the colors should apply a bit like they look in the pan. So I'm well aware of the fact that colors do change because of transparencies. Nothing goes on with 100% saturation on your eyelid. Your skin color is coming through, so there is a certain type of manipulation in any type of eyeshadow, and it will never look 100% like in the pan. The mattes, they perform, they blend very, very well. I had no problem. My biggest fear was that the shade Blindfold and Blood Off, that they are going to be patchy, which is a lot of the times the case, that blacks or reds, they can go on a little bit like pitchy patchy, but they didn't. They blended very, very well. They hold up very, very well. And the only thing that I want to point out is that Blood Off on my skin tone does not look like in the pan. It turned a little bit grunge pink, but I'm not talking about that type of pink that a lot of reds turn, like for example Glamlight on me. The Glamlight reds in 9 out of 10 times turned bright pink on me. This one just gets a pinkier tone in my opinion. When it comes to the shimmer, I have to admit that the one that is a letdown for me is definitely Toxic Bond, but I think this is just pressed way too hard, because when I go in this with the finger, absolutely stunning. But I don't use my finger to apply makeup. I use a brush, and with the brush I feel like it's not really picking up. With Shackle and No Safe Word, the color picked up very, very well. I didn't have any of the just sat problems as I had with the Toxic Bond shade. You know how I struggled in that look. At the end, I was able to create a beautiful look, so that is not the case. But I just want to make you aware of the fact that if you were expecting a super duper high pigmented and highly covering in this beautiful color, actually it shifts pinky golden shade, you will not get this. There is a very, very interesting thinness to this, but it is pressed a little bit too hard. Same applies, in my opinion, to the Sweet Lies highlighter. This is barely visible on the skin, so I think that a lot of people will like this. But does it make sense in a palette like this? Maybe not. I do like the highlighter overall. I think it just gives a nice tone, but same here. I think it's pressed a little bit too hard, because I can already see that the surface, it's not hard panning. Hard panning looks a bit different. Sometimes with shimmer eyeshadows, when they are pressed too hard, every time you put a brush in there, before you even touch anything on your face, you are kind of also pressing it again and again. And it's like that top layer is then just getting so hard, and it has such little color payoff that you need to scrape a little bit off. It is something that can happen, but to be honest, it is something that I don't want to happen. Used with a smaller brush as a inner corner highlight, I do like the sheerness actually. So I am satisfied with the shade as long as I just use this as a inner corner highlight. And Bite Mark, the blush, it's just not my color for blush, but I'm very, very happy with the shade as an additional blending shade to these seven eyeshadows. I think overall it's quite clear. I am quite satisfied with that collection. I don't know, did I have any expectations? Actually not. I also didn't watch any of the other reviews, any of swatches or whatnot. I came across some looks that people did with this, but I always, when there is something that I do review, I don't watch other videos because I don't want to be influenced by maybe their opinion. And I know that you are always interested in the way, how do I put this in my rating? So if you don't know, I do rank my eyeshadow palettes. I try to quantify feelings. So we have 3 categories. We have quality, colors, color circle, color story, and personal excitement. And I rank each of them on a scale from 1 to 10. When it comes to the color story, I give this, what do I give this? Considering that I will use these 2 here as eyeshadows too, I give this a 9 out of 10. I feel like there is something missing, but I can't put my finger on what. Maybe a pure gray. Maybe the pure gray is what I am a little bit missing here. Then this would be a perfect color story for the whole composition here. So yeah, color story is 9 out of 10. Quality wise, the only criticism that I had was Toxic Bond and Sweet Lies. So basically 2 out of 9 shades. So honestly, I think I can give this a solid 8 out of 10. And personal excitement, when I look at this, I get quite excited, but I get not as excited as with, for example, I don't know, the Freya palette with Cherry Up, the Floating Life one. So my personal excitement, I give this a 8.5 out of 10. So the overall score for this palette is an 8.5 out of 10, and to put this into a perspective into my collection, this is the same score that, for example, a Cosmic Brushes Neutral had, or the Makeup by Mario Ethereal Ice Moonlight, or the Huda Beauty Icy Nude. I think this is a great start for the brand, and I am fairly excited for what they will do in the future. So let me know, of course, your thoughts down below. Have you tried this brand? Will you try this brand? Let me know all the deets. Thank you so much again to Chokehold Cosmetics for sending me over your whole collection. And also thank you all for watching and joining today. Make sure to subscribe to don't miss out any of the other upcoming videos. And I'll see you soon.